committee will come back to order. Let us resume the questioning. Senator Fuller.
Well, in my office, we had a great discussion, and I appreciated the information. I think I just want to reiterate and echo Senator Alquist's concerns. I know we talked at length about how you may be able to try to improve the regulation adoption process, how you could eliminate the backlog. Also, I'll be brief on this issue as well, but I think we expressed that we felt there was a culture of non-responsiveness to the department that we were hoping you would address, and you talked a little bit about a strategic plan, and I want to urge that one of the conversation pieces that we kind of kicked around, but I want to urge that you do an external biannual or annual report every year on how you are meeting those objectives, stats with how you are meeting those objectives to change the culture. I think that'll serve you well. But I have two questions that are specific that I'd just like to throw out for you. And one is that Senator Alquist has brought us some really compelling issues today that have also informed my last discussion with you. And I would be really interested in knowing what date you could complete emergency regs for Senator Alquist's bill if you were able to move them up on your regulation adoption schedule.
I've asked staff at this point in time to develop a timeline, and they've also been working with the legal department today to look at making sure that the staff who the program staff and the legal staff can sit down together and outline that timeline. I don't have that back to me yet. As I committed to Senator Alquist, I will definitely review that timeline, of course, with the director and with Mr. Kim, and then we will look at that, and we will do everything that we possibly can to ensure that we can get these regulations written as soon as possible and then get them in the APA process.
But I'd like to ask,
I don't know the exact date
I would
yet.
like to ask that in the report that you submit to our pro tem that you make some estimates for that. That will help us all feel more comfortable about this issue.
It's a very good suggestion. Just, some timetables, and it's, it will allow you then to hold your staff accountable to a timeline and give us some more comfort. It's a frustration as a legislative branch of government that we pass laws. And we have some of the issues, not making excuses, sometimes it's funding and staff resources. But really, we pass these laws, and then it's in the hands of the executive branch to develop regulations so that the law works. And when it's 3-4 years later, I think you can understand the frustration.
Absolutely.
And then lastly, a piece of information that I'm interested in is you stated that there was a survey that the feds felt that you should have used theirs and that you'd use the states instead. And so it occurs to me that perhaps the feds felt that that their survey was more comprehensive and may have turned up these preconditions that would have triggered a personal inspection prior to the egregious case that we just discussed happening. And I'm interested to know if that's what the feds thought, and because it's clear that the state survey did not turn up the conditions or indicators that you might have needed to go out and intervene. And just kind of interested in
Actually, the annual survey is a federal survey, the one that's more comprehensive in nature, and the complaints are investigated now using a dual enforcement process, which means that we conduct the complaint investigation under federal authority, and then we issue state citations as well as federal deficiencies. At that time, in the OIG report, they wanted us to just use the federal process.
And their reasoning was?
that they keep track of all the federal complaints, and they use that data to rank nursing homes in what's referred to as the 5-star system, in which they give stars to nursing homes based upon their compliance. And if we didn't use the federal process as consistently as some of the other states were doing, then our reports didn't compare to those other states with respect to generating that 5-star rating.
Well, I just think it would be nice if at some point you could provide us with some understanding about how you can either change the state reporting or the federal, or merge them, or do something that would give you a better indication that some type, and maybe it's totally without your control, just put some justification in for that, but it just seems that your indicators need to be stronger for you, because this was a very egregious case, and you had no foreknowledge through any indicators that should have provided you with some indications to give you time to go intervene.
We'd be happy to address that.
Thank you.
Senator Dutton?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we talked about a situation that I had a few years ago that's still pending, and Senator Alquist actually was helpful because she was chairman of the Health Committee at the time that I was dealing with this particular issue. It started back in 2007, and the problem was that for whatever reason, for 14 years, California used federal regs to regulate the curriculum requirements for the radiological schools here in California, including those in the community college system. And the problem was somebody at that time decided that California's regs, which were 14 years out of date, should actually be enforced. The problem was they were not in compliance, and the federal regs is what the department had actually for 14 years said that they wanted to have the schools use. Well, that created a bunch of problems because one of the, when you are teaching x-ray techs and nurses, quite often their classroom is veterans hospitals. Veterans hospitals aren't going to follow state regs. They'll follow federal regs. And also when you get your license, especially as an x-ray technologist, you have to get a federal license anyway. So I brought this to the departments, and none of the people here, with the exception of Mrs. Billingsley, were there, but she wasn't in charge of this area at the time. Her predecessor, by the way, who was no longer is with the department, he now works for the receiver, if this gives you a little bit of confidence in that situation. Anyway, the regs, by the end of 2009, I finally gotten frustrated about the fact that we couldn't seem to get everything put together. Even though we had faculty members from up and down the state willing to actually write the regs for everybody, write the regs for the department so they could be used for the curriculum for the programs. So I ended up in frustration running a bill in 2010, and that's when I appeared before Senator Alquist's committee. And it basically was just say, until you get around to rewriting the state regs, at least we'll let them follow the federal regs. And that was very simply what the bill said. Now, I was asked to put a sunset date on the bill of January 1st, 2015. My only concern I have right now in talking to you, I understand that we're still working on those, that they're now under review. And what my concern is if it follows what happened in the past, should I go ahead and run a bill now to extend that sunset date so that we don't have to have a problem with the schools? I mean, I'd like some kind of commitment from you that you'll get this thing resolved before I leave.
Senator Dutton, again, I share your frustration with the backlog on the regulation packages in the department. And we've been meeting with all of the program staff to dive into each of the regulation packages to find out what the issues are. There's not a single fix to the backlog. There's multiple fixes that we're looking at and implementing. In this particular case, as you are aware, there's an advisory committee, the RadTech committee that advises the department. They're meeting in Los Angeles May 2nd, and that will be the last review of the input regarding this regs package. Ms. Billingsley has also met with the staff, and she can give you more information on that.
Okay. You know, again, I think, I'm not speaking for every member of the committee, I think we would find it acceptable if there was even a longer timeline to clean up the backlog, if we only knew what the timeline was. You know, a sense of certainty. I think that's what the committee wants to know. If we know that, you know, it'll be X number of months until something's done, okay, well, you know, we can, but at least then we know and mark the calendar that, and then it's happening. It's really the unknown and the uncertainty, and then, you know, months and years go by, and that's, I think you, very clear as you do your assessment of the backlog. Here's what it is. Here's the priorities. Here, every month we're going to take care of X number until we get this done. That will inspire, I think, some confidence.
Or what you also could do, too, means for 14 years, the state of California was happy just to adopt the federal rules, which everybody has to abide by in order for them to be licensed. Why go ahead and try to reinvent the wheel? Why not just do that? The fact is, this is like Senator Steinberg was saying, this has been going on since 2007 in this particular case. Now, none of you were there, and so I'm not blaming you, but it is part of the frustration that a lot of us go through when we're trying to deal with things, and so this should be relatively simple. And so I'm going to be out of the Senate at the end of this year. I just kind of like to know I don't have to come back and bug Senator Steinberg and Senator DeLeon and Fuller and remind them of this situation. Plus, I don't want my wife, who teaches in this particular profession, to come complain to me anymore about the fact that she's having to go deal with these outdated regs because some new director now has shown up and decided that they want to end up going back to doing California's old regs. So I just like to know that it's going to get done, and I know that the sunset's 2015, January 1st, but if at all possible, you kind of expedite it so maybe we can finish it up before the end of this year. I would appreciate that. Get it off my plate. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Dutton. Senator DeLeon?
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. I have a question, or a series of questions for Dr. Ron Chapman. I read your answers to the questionnaire that you submitted to the Rules Committee and to the staff, specifically question number 17, which is on page 20 with regards to drinking water. The answers to the questions were very thorough and comprehensive, and I would say they were very well answered. Page 20.
Thank you.
Question 17, obviously the issue is with regards to drinking water. Specifically, obviously, your answers are very thorough, very comprehensive with regards to this issue. Obviously, it's an issue that disproportionately impacts certain demographics and certain geographical areas in the state of California, more so than others. It doesn't so much impact a district such as mine, which is more urbanized. We have our other challenges and issues. But the more rural areas, I would say, obviously, in the Central Valley that, again, are disproportionately impacted because of industry or certain type of industry of nitrates, fertilizers, seeping into the groundwater. Also, certain chemicals, I would say here, 1, 2, 3, trichloropropane, obviously, and arsenic. My question is that obviously these areas, the rural areas, more impoverished areas, are very challenged infrastructure-wise. Obviously, there's a correlation with the socioeconomics of the constituents, or more so the folks who live in this area. Give me sort of your long-term game here with regards to bringing safe, quality water is very well articulated. Give me a little more short-term game. And I know that it's my understanding, at least, that Assemblymember Henry Perea, who geographically represents this area, has been in deep conversations with staff members at DPH. To what level, I don't know, but from my understanding with my conversations with Assemblymember Henry Perea, they've sort of kind of been going on for a few months now, and as of today, there's still no game plan or action plan. I think specifically there was a very real and hard ask with regards to the emergency fund that you have, and I know it has a different set of criteria. And the question I have is, for you, Mr. Chapman, is specifically with regards to that emergency fund. Are you guys willing to be flexible with the criteria so that this population that has had no access at all whatsoever to safe and clean drinking water be able to access those dollars? If so, when could that happen? If no, why not?
So the emergency fund that we have is $10 million. And those funds are used, for example, when an existing water system collapses and the community no longer has access to the water. That emergency fund is tapped into. We do have communities like the communities in Tulare County where I visited with Assemblymember Perea that unfortunately have not had access to safe drinking water for several years because their wells are contaminated with nitrate and arsenic, as you said. Those communities that have had those long-term problems do not fulfill the definition for emergency for use in this fund.
I understand that, and I can appreciate your answer. What I'm asking is other than a natural collapse of the infrastructure given to some natural disaster, whether it be some catastrophic hurricane, earthquake, what have you, et cetera, there's one key thing that you stated, which I think fits under the definition with regards to this specific population, is they have no access to clean or safe water, whether it was man-made, whether it was a natural catastrophe. Again, let me be very clear so it's not ambiguous or vague, or there's no misinterpretation to you, Dr. Chapman. My question set forth to you, will you folks at DPH be flexible with regards to your emergency fund dollars to provide in the interim short-term period safe drinking water, tapping into your emergency fund dollars?
We're looking at a number of fund sources to support these communities, and you mentioned that in the last few months, what is our plan? We now have a strategic plan to address these small water systems. We'll be working to improve the drinking water in 63 of these communities over the next 3 years. We've identified those communities, we're doing outreach to those communities, and we have funds that can support those communities. It's not the emergency fund, it's actually other funds like the state revolving fund.
So you have a more sort of, and you correct me if I'm sort of off the pathway, more mid to long-term strategic, obviously, goals that you want to execute and implement to bring them safe and reliable water.
Yes.
Let me dial back on this right here and focus on the immediate, which is short-term right now. I haven't heard anything from you yet, unless I didn't capture it, with regards to short-term. Can you give me a short-term panacea? So if you don't have a short-term solution, just be very clear, because I don't want an ambiguous sort of dance around the issue. If you don't have it, you don't have it. But if you do have it, what is it?
There are intermediate options available to communities, for example, point of use or point of entry systems where filtration devices are installed where the people live in their homes, for example, or outside of the home where the water comes into the home. That's the point of entry. And these communities have the option of applying for those point of use or point of entry systems that could be used on a temporary basis. And again, we have funds available to fund those type of projects.
And which pot does those products come from, and how can they walk me through it at a ground level? Someone obviously who I would characterize, you probably have obviously more face time in that community, having visited with Henry Perea. How does that work? How do I apply for those dollars, and which pot does it come from? Does it come from a pot that you have that's earmarked in DPH specifically for this issue?
Yes.
And what pot is that?
I believe it's a state revolving fund.
The SW,
Yes.
GBH, and
Yeah.
so forth, with the
Right.
alphabet soup thing. Okay. So you do, how much money do you have in that pot right now?
This fund is 80% supported by federal and 20% state match.
Okay.
And their annual moving forward is $86 million in that fund, and then an additional $40 million that comes in from interest payments and loans as part of that fund.
Okay.
So a total of 126 million.
126. And so then if I am a constituent, a consumer in this geographical location, how do I draw down on those dollars? Is it a municipal issue, or is it an individual issue, or is it a county issue?
It depends on the circumstances, but we have technical assistance in these communities, so we provide assistance in completing the application. So there's an application process. There's money available to do feasibility. There are grants available to do feasibility studies, and then there's money available for the actual construction.
Okay. And the construction, can you expound a little more on the construction?
Well, the construction piece is basically a contract and an agreement with the state on how those funds are going to be used to, for example, install and use a point of use or point of entry system, or any other type of system that the community would be interested in applying for.
Okay. What I want to emphasize is that I've heard the testimony, and I've heard the line of questioning from Senator Alquist as well as Mr. Dutton, Senator Dutton, I should say, and I mean this in general. I mean this in general, not specific to DPH, but it's a little scary, obviously, when you have a lot of regulations that have yet to be promulgated, and you have a backlog, if you will, and we can have an interface with elected officials who are ultimately beholden to their own specific constituents. But when folks go back to the specific departments, bureaucracies that they represent, and they do the thing what they want to do, obviously you're not responsible for past administrations and past directors of DPH or assistant, secretaries and deputy directors, what have you, et cetera, et cetera. It's a little scary. It's a little scary. When I hear from Assemblymember Henry Perea, a sense of frustration as well, obviously because he's the direct representative of these constituents who have no access to any clean, safe water, and the disparities and disproportionate impacts of nitrates in arsenic, and obviously, again, I'm not a chemist, but trichloro-propane. I like to get a very clear, crystal clear, hard commitment, if in fact you're prepared to do so, to do everything within your power to direct your staff to be on top of assisting Henry Perea, Assemblymember Henry Perea, to make sure that that there's relief for these communities in this specific area. I kind of feel in a way, by extension, I'm representing him and his constituents in this area right now. So if you're prepared to do so, I would very much welcome that.
Absolutely, I am committed, and I made that visit with Assembly Member Perea because, having worked for years in the community, I understand those concerns, and it is a priority for us. That's what the funding is there for. And as I mentioned, we have a small water system strategic plan that we have reviewed as a team, and we're going to be rolling out in the next, actually it's going to be reviewed with the governor's office second week of April.
And then one last thing, who is your point person under your tutelage with regards to this specific issue?
The point person?
Your individual on your staff, your deputy director, assistant deputy director, who reports to you directly with regards to the issue of safe drinking water?
Maren Klein.
Maureen Klein, okay. If you could be so kind enough to convey to her, if they could keep us abreast, we'd very much
Absolutely.
appreciate
Yes.
it. So just want to make sure that we just follow through. I know one thing, that being ahead of a department with all these challenges, with a backlog of regulations, with you guys can't resolve everything, and I understand that. It's just like us being elected officials. The only difference with us is that when we're under the gun, we're under the gun, and then we get our names splattered in the press and the media, that's us, you know. But I know with the budget deficit, with the lack of staff, with cutbacks, it's been very difficult to move forward and execute all the action plans, measures that have been proposed and passed into law by us collectively. You know, it's always a very challenge, but for me, it's always a great opportunity to develop a relationship and move forward in such a manner that there's complete and real thorough follow through. So I welcome that. I will have a conversation with Assembly Member Henry Perea too, so hopefully that collectively we can resolve this situation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I've been obviously paying very close attention to the line of questioning from each of the members, and very detailed about specific subject matter areas, very important areas. And I'm thinking it begs a big question for me. Maybe it's the easiest question to answer, and maybe it's the hardest. I know the history of this department. I know my predecessor in the Senate, Senator Deborah Ortiz, helped champion this. I think it's obviously in name and in terms of vision, it's a great idea to have a Department of Public Health. What is the mission of this department? And is it? Are we asking you to do too much? I mean, in terms of the way we've organized this thing, I mean, I look at everything from the Kettleman City birth defects to monitoring nursing homes to clean water to food safety to workforce and succession planning to fee right-sizing to low-level radioactive waste here. I mean, you speak about these years-long backlogs on regulatory packages here. Maybe we ought to be stepping back here and just asking some more fundamental questions here. Is this the best organization and structure to fulfill all of these very important public and oversight responsibilities? Easy question.
Thank you, Senator Steinberg.
Well, and I would, excuse me, I would also point out, of course, that in 2011 there was an audit done in which the auditor spoke to the concern about the lack of a strategic plan. It's almost like, duh. I mean, look at all of the look at all the things here. I wouldn't know how to explain it really in a completely coherent way, given the description and the breadth of issue areas and responsibility. Can you?
Sure, I'll give it a shot.
Give it a shot.
You know, my career, I've been in public health for 20 years. And what you describe is the nature of public health and is also one of the greatest challenges. Even at a local level, we have in public health, our reach is very, very broad. We have 200 programs in our Department of Public Health. And public health traditionally has dealt with individual health, community health, the health of the environment, and a number of factors. Public health touches people's lives every day in many different ways. And again, it creates a number of significant challenges. I was handed the independent review of the California Department of Public Health when I was offered this position. So I was able to review that report prior to accepting the position, and the report identified 8 areas that the department needed to work on, and I was greatly saddened by the report, but I also felt the report was accurate. given my experience in public health in California. I was saddened because there are outstanding, hardworking, dedicated professionals in public health in our department, some of whom are nationally and internationally renowned for their work. And what we as a team are dedicated to doing, and I think we bring expertise and background to be able to make this happen, is to unify the department, to bring the administrative functions and tie them with the programmatic functions, which have traditionally been siloed. We've already, in the limited time we've been on the job, made huge headway in contracting, which was one of the top priority issues that was identified in the independent review. And I'm confident that as a new leadership team, we can work with these great professionals in public health to improve the areas that we've been talking about today.
You know, with term limits in the legislature, when new folks are elected, you know, sometimes you get asked, you know, since we're such veterans, what's the key to success? I always have the same answer, which is pick a couple things you really care about and do them really well. And that same advice, I think, would apply to anybody in any responsibility, whether it be in the legislative branch or the executive branch. Do you believe that the department's breadth of responsibility is too wide, is too large? Can you do everything? Can you do everything? All these important issues. Do you believe that you can do it all at the highest level, the way this operation is set up?
Yes, I do. Our goal is to create a high-performing organization that can accomplish the goals that we're talking about. In January, we launched a strategic planning process, and we now have a one-page draft strategic map that will give us direction over the next 3 years and will be a unifying force for the department. Again, what you've described is the nature of public health and is a huge challenge, but I believe with our expertise and focus and the hard work of the staff, we can do it.
Okay. Witnesses in support of the nominations, please. I think, no, Ms. Billingsley, please. I think everyone can testify at that microphone. That's fine.
Indeed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Donna Brownsey here for the Breast Cancer Fund in support of the nominees. We have worked with them on environmental health programs and have been impressed with their responsiveness. I also, in this instance, want to say words about the staff of the Department of Public Health who work under very challenging circumstances with tiny amount of resources and who really try to keep the public health and the work that they do to provide information to Californians about exposures that could impact their health. And in our discussions with the leadership here, Dr. Chapman and Ms. Billingsley in particular, we have been impressed with their commitment to these most important programs for the state of California and would urge your confirmation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon. David Salelas. I'm Public Health Director for Orange County and currently President of the County Health Executives Association of California. And on behalf of the County Health Executives, would like to support all three individuals today. I've had the good pleasure of working with Dr. Chapman for many years. We both were Public Health Directors together. Ron's a former president of our association when he was at the local level, and in their time at the department thus far have been great partners with us in local public health to administer the programs and protect the health of the people of California. So I'd urge your support for all three of them.
Thank you. Mr. Donner.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Dwayne Donner, President of the California Hospital Association. Maybe Greg and I are the only two in the room that have been here for 3 decades working with various departments, and in particular the California Department of Public Health. And while it may seem that there's a huge backlog of regulations, and there is, 27 years ago, last month, I had a meeting with the Secretary and the Chairman of the Department of Healthcare Services, which was combined with what is now CDPH. And we had a conversation about outdated hospital regulations. And everybody agreed they had to be changed and updated, because at that point in time they were 12 years old. They have not yet been changed after 27 years.
Well, it's less than 3 decades.
And that's right, it's less than the 3 decades. And so this is not something that the current appointees have created. It has been built up over decades. And every time when a new director comes in, I have a meeting and we talk about the outdated regulations. And when Secretary Dooley was appointed, she understood it from the other side. When Dr. Chapman started, he and I had a conversation. And for the first time in the nearly 3 decades I've been here at CHA, I saw a new kind of leadership, from the secretary to the director of the department to the deputy directors. And that leadership resulted in the development of a new strategic plan and map, which they had never done before in the department. It was not just digging down and saying we're going to work harder and not necessarily smarter. He's tried to create a new culture in that department, which was needed. And so they have been responsive in the kind of leadership that it takes to turn this around and do things that needed to be done. And I am really optimistic and very pleased with what I've observed in the progress of the department since these leaders have taken over. And I believe that the state will be well served, that the public interest will be served by giving these individuals the opportunity to produce based on the foundation that they have laid. And as one of the regulated entities, we believe that they are responsive. We believe that they have the right attitude to do their job, and we respectfully request the confirmation of these 3 nominees.
Thank you very much for testifying. We appreciate it.
Judith Regal with the County Health Executives Association. I'm the executive director. Just wanted to reiterate our organization's strong support for Dr. Chapman and his team, and also on behalf of my colleague Kelly Brooks, who had to leave, to express the support of the California State Association of Counties.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members. Esmeralda Soria with California Rural Legal Assistance Foundation, also here to in strong support of Dr. Chapman's confirmation. I do want to thank Senator De Leon for raising up the issue about the rural communities that are facing the issue of safe drinking water. And I appreciate Dr. Chapman's commitment to working with Assemblymember Perea and continuing to work with also the community organizations that are on the ground trying to address the issue. I do want to point out a few things that I hope that we can continue as we move along and really rolling out your strategic plan. We are pleased to hear that is something that you guys are working on, that you guys have identified these 63 communities that will hopefully in the near future receive these fundings. But I do want to point out that these communities do face very unique challenges. While we do have the Safe Drinking Water Revolving Fund available, there are many barriers that exist, and so I hope that in that strategic plan we are able to identify those barriers in terms of their eligibility criteria, and I hope that we can really actually revisit and consider the what Senator De Leon mentioned about these emergency funds. People don't have safe drinking water, and that's bottom line. Folks want safe drinking water, and I think that we really need to revisit that and see if we can be flexible about how we spend those emergency funds, given that these communities face the challenge of the eligibility criteria with the bigger pot of funding. I think we need some really interim solutions to this problem. And also, obviously, thinking in the long term. But we're here in support, and we hope to continue working together on this issue. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee. My name is Bela Matash. I'm the health officer of Solano County, and I'm here on behalf of the CCLHO, the California Conference of Local Health Officers. And
I'm sorry.
Sorry. Sorry. Bela Matiash, I'm here on behalf of CCLHO, the California Conference of Local Health Officers, and we represent the 61 local physician health officers that provide the oversight for health departments throughout the state. You've raised a number of important issues here. As a committee, you've also identified the very, very broad scope of responsibility of the department, and this broad scope is shared at the local level by us. So one of the most important things that the CDPH does is to work with local health departments in effecting solutions to many of these problems and identifying them, dealing with them, et cetera. And what you have before you are three individuals who represent a very strong team and a group that we can work with very, very closely. Dr. Chapman himself was a member of CCLHO and of our executive team. We've worked closely with Ms. Billingsley over the years. Mr. Kim is also from the local health level and brings that experience to the table. And as the local partners of CDPH, we welcome their confirmation as an opportunity to continue to work closely with CDPH.
Thank you.
Senator Steinberg, Bruce Palmer with the Health Officers Association of California. And we're in very strong support of the confirmation of State Health Officer Chapman and Chief Deputy Directors Billingsley and Kim. I just, a point of information about the Ortiz bill. The licensing function was added to that bill late in the process and was not part of the original Department of Public Health bill that was constructed at the time and authored by Senator Ortiz.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. Angela Blanchard here representing the 7 California affiliates of Susan G. Komen for the Cure in strong support of the confirmation of Dr. Chapman and his team. Since Dr. Chapman and Kathleen Billingsley arrived at the department last year, Susan G. Komen for the Cure has seen a significant turnaround in the level of stakeholder engagement, as well as in the responsiveness of running Every Woman Counts program as efficiently and effectively as possible. For these reasons, we strongly support their confirmation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Justin Garrett with the March of Dimes in support of Dr. Chapman's confirmation and his team. They've demonstrated a strong commitment to the mission of the March of Dimes, which is to improve the health of women, infants, and children through reducing birth defects, premature birth, and infant mortality. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Chair and members. Kathy Mossberg representing the Public Health Institute as well as the California Association of Food Banks. We strongly support the confirmation of these three individuals. Over the last year and a half, both organizations have worked closely with all three individuals on a number of issues, and they have dealt with them in an open and positive way, in a forthright way, and in a way that allowed for some, they put forward some creativity in dealing with some problems that we've had, systematic problems, particularly in the area of contracting, that we've had over the decades, and particularly the last several years. And so we really are interested and excited to work with this team as we move forward and think that they bring creative solutions to the contracting process, and through that process have been able to get really valuable and needed federal dollars down to the ground level to serve folks both for public health purposes as well as to feed folks. So thank you. We support their confirmation.
Thank you. Are there any witnesses in opposition to the nominations? Is the strategic plan that you've referenced, this is a public document, I assume?
Yes, we've been sharing with a number of stakeholders and actually plan on a ledge staff briefing in April. I think we're trying to schedule that to share the draft strategic plan to get input.
Ledge staff briefing with legislative staff?
Yes.
Here? Good. I mean, I think that's excellent, and I'm sure the members after this discussion as well will want to review it and have some input and help you hone the mission.
Thank you.
I think the questioning has been tough on all these individual areas, but as Mr. Donner pointed out, a lot of history here, well predating your tenure. I'm prepared to support. By the way, how are you, Mr. Kim?
I'm fine, Chairman Stein.
But I just wanted to make sure there was a question directed.
I don't feel left out.
I think I'm prepared to support your nominations, and thank you for your public service. Really, it's hard jobs, hard times. I do have this concern that I think you do about doing everything you do really well, because it's all important public safety, public health, public policy. And I think the strategic plan process is an opportunity here to really make sure that the mission is properly focused and maybe as important, understood by the legislature and by the public. But you're good people and prepared to support you. Senator Dutton?
I'd like to make a comment.
Yes, Senator
That's all right.
Alquist.
I would like to reiterate that they're all really good people. I do appreciate that. And I am prepared to support the nomination for today in this committee today. I think there's still a lot to do, and I need to see what happens in the next several months, and we'll make decisions accordingly down the line. But for today, I'm prepared and be happy to move it.
Right, and thank you. We'll have Senator Alquist, I think, move it if that's okay.
I'm sorry, did Senator Dutton move it?
Yeah,
That would be fine.
It's fine. We can do the old double move. The old double move. It's allowed in Robert's rules. The addendum. We do, before we take this up on the floor, take a couple of weeks, if we can get back some of the information we requested about nursing home complaints, the best that you can to outline a potential calendar for dealing with the backlog on the regulatory packages, that would be a good next step here in terms of helping you with your strategic plan.
Thank you.
Good enough?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Please call the roll on Senator Alquist's and Senator Dutton's motion.
Senators Alquist. Alquist, aye. DeLeon.
Aye.
DeLeon, aye. Fuller.
Aye.
Fuller, aye. Dutton. Dutton, aye. Steinberg.
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
That is a 5-0 vote. Thank you very, very much for your patience and for working with us. All right? Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. We have several more items here for the committee, including a walk-on from Senator Wright. The walk-on's closed session. I'm sorry. Senators, any of the senators on items 1, I want to put over without objection as well item 3. Discuss this with Senator Dutton for 2 weeks. So we're on break next. We're on district work week next week. Items 1 and then 4 through 6, 7 is off the calendar, 8 through 14. Are there any questions on those items? No? All right. Moved then by, again, Senator Dutton. Without objection, we will substitute the unanimous roll call on those items. 5-0. Did we cover it? That's the meeting. We do have an brief executive session.